All right, and now we welcome back Jess McClain for I think this is the third time so far this year. We did post Olympic trials, we did around your Brooks signing, and now
Oh
we've got you
yeah.
back on the podcast right after an eighth place finish at the New York City Marathon, 2:27:19. I mean, I think it's a really strong run on the tough New York City Marathon course. Like compared to your PB being 2:25 from the Olympic trials in Orlando, how are you feeling
Yeah.
about it?
I'm feeling good. It's funny, I feel like there was so much going on in New York that I couldn't really, process it or reflect while I was there. I was just kind of soaking up the moment, enjoying time with family, friends, and New York road runners and everything else. And I think once I kind of got on the plane and got home, I was able to digest the race a little bit more. I'm definitely happy with my first showing on the major front. I think I fell a little short of, the one kind of goal I had in my mind was top American, going after that spot. I'm proud of how I ran the race. I don't think I quite know in the marathon yet. Like once that decisive bigger move is made, kind of around 16 to 18 or perhaps even 20. It's not that I don't trust myself yet. I just don't know how much I should be hurting up until that point to know whether to go or to stay back. So I think as I run more and more and I get more miles on my legs, I'll be able to kind of to hang with that lead pack later and later and later. But I stuck to my guns. I didn't really have a race plan going in other than, really taking the first few miles to feel it out and then really just believing that I belonged in that lead pack for as long as I could hang out with them. And once that definitive move was made on First Ave, it was kind of like I mean, you've got to make a call within a few seconds if you're going or not. And it didn't feel right to to go in that moment. And I think now seeing the back half of my race having negative split and feeling as good as I did going up Fifth Ave, well down rather, but feeling up. um, and the park, I think I probably could have hung with that move. So I think it's all good learnings, and I had such a great time figuring out how to navigate like the emotions and obligations and really fun commitments before a big marathon like that. So that it was just all a huge learning experience, and to be honest, I hadn't really felt those nerves in a really long time. So I learned a ton, had so much fun. And the race was, I mean, it was awesome. It's like more than I could have asked for a marathon experience.
I wonder, we're gonna do some reflecting on the past year for sure, but I feel like if I would have taken just like the last 3 minutes of, your answer there, and we would have time traveled a year ago and played it to you. This is before you run like the
Yeah.
US Olympic marathon trials, like what you would have made of just the athlete you've become in such a quick span of time.
Yeah, it'd be pretty crazy. I think I really didn't look beyond like February 4th. Uh, Leading into the trials, I had no idea what was gonna, be on the other side of that for me in terms of opportunities or how I'd feel about running or competing in general. I kind of have mentioned that I went into that thinking like, oh, this will be a really great last like, kind of like send off tour of the the racing chapter of my life. And as I started training for the marathon, I came to the realization like, oh my gosh, I think my body was like meant to train at, you know, in the marathon realm, and really figure out what I could do in this event. And I think once I started putting a timeline on my career again, I was like, oh man, it just didn't feel right to end it or to want to move on to something else entirely or leave running in the rearview mirror. So it's just been really fun to like rediscover a love for running and competing like at this level. I think it's been a journey. So to think, if a year ago you showed me anything from this year, interviews, races, results, oh man, I don't think I'd be able to quite process it or believe it, to be honest, just because I was just taking it literally day by day.
So we'll get into breaking down the New York City Marathon race, but to kind of set it up, and this might be a little bit repetitive because you and I caught up before the race at the pre-race like press conference area. And so I've asked you some
Yeah.
of this stuff before, but for the people who maybe didn't listen or watch that interview. How did you feel about like this training block, and how did it piggyback off of the weird summer of maybe I'm racing the Olympics, maybe I'm not, and
Yeah.
waiting for that call, which almost came but then didn't come. So when did really the build up for New York City begin?
Um, I've been thinking about New York for a minute, like a while. I definitely wanted to challenge myself like on the major scene this year, and Chicago seemed awesome, but I don't think it was the right time to train for, the marathon at the pace that I would like to run in Chicago during the Phoenix summer. And I think coming off of the track, I needed a little bit more buffer time just to bounce back from that. And I had to really like emotionally and physically invest in like the 10K, the two 10Ks that I did on the track this year. And I think it just took a little bit more of a toll on me than I thought it would. Just getting back on the track and, getting back on that horse. So Chicago, I just don't think I was ready for like the paced, 5:25, 5:30 marathon quite yet. And New York just felt so right because it's all about competing. I'm familiar with New York. I love going there to race. So I had my sights set on that. Probably pretty soon after the track trials. So yeah, I mean, I had reached out to Des or we chatted, briefly while I was trying to decide what to do. And I had no idea. I mean, I'm navigating and negotiating everything on my own now. So I'm
That's
taking
right.
all advice I can get. And she was like, literally just pick the marathon that's gonna like get you out of bed the most excited every morning when you hate your life at 4:30 a.m. and it's 90 degrees. And that was really good advice. And New York was the right call. So training for that started pretty soon after the track trials. I took like a week. It was like 4th of July. I had fun. I did a fun run. And then I kind of just dove right in. So it's been a long year. I don't think I've taken more than a week off since the trials in Orlando. So I'm tired.
Yeah. You mentioned
Yeah.
that, I guess, like in the interviews you did in the mix zone right after this race, is just sort of like even the taper felt tiring, where you were
Yeah.
just like, there were moments where maybe it's so interesting to try and read the signs that your body is sending you, where it's like, it's
Yep.
either like, I'm tired and I need a break, or
Yep.
you can also translate it as like, I'm race ready. So what were the signs along the way in the last couple weeks of training that made you feel like you were ready for New York?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely reflected on training because this is the first block I've done like true marathon workouts. I haven't done the long extended, threshold or 10 to 12 miles at race pace because that's like physically impossible in Phoenix. And I would put myself into a mental and physical hole if I tried to like tackle 10 miles at 5:35 pace, like at 5 a.m. in 90 degrees. So, but a lot of the workouts and long runs that I did, I've combined like my longer, long run efforts with a lot more quality this build, 2 by 6 miles. I've done 6 by 2K. I've done um, 4 by 3 miles or 3 by 4 miles. It's all blurring in my head together at this point. But so I gained a lot more confidence just by stringing together, and I hit my highest mileage week ever, 86 miles. So I got a lot more confidence just from the training that I did. That was more like true marathon training. But with that comes, and this is the first time I really understood the taper process. I really, invested in that 2 weeks out and cut down on mileage quite a bit, kept intensity there. But the minute I hit the taper, it was like I was exhausted. It was like head to toe, just tiredness. And my right hip felt a little off, like starting 14 to 10 days out. And I was like, oh my God, like what? Like literally felt and survived amazing this entire block.
It's the phantom pains that always get to you.
I don't know though. It was weird. It was like I felt totally fine. And then one day it was like an easy run day. It just was like a little weird. And I get PT and physio every week. And that was something I was kind of talking with my massage therapist about. And he's like, oh no, you feel great. And um it was a little concerning, but I remember like everybody around me saying like, oh my God, this is normal. Like things creep up and tapers are for just really dialing back and letting the body like absorb all the training that we've done the last 12 to 13, 14 weeks. But then once I got to New York, everything like settled down. My nerves settled down. I could sleep more through the night. Like I was barely sleeping through the night during the taper because I just wasn't as tired, not training as much. Like I was just, oh my gosh, it was too much. But yeah, once I got to New York, everything was like, whoosh, okay, we're here. Body feels good. We're back in racing mentality again, which, I hadn't raced since the 10K road champs. And that was kind of like the longest I'd gone without racing.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it was just good to get to New York and like just be there.
I think there's been a couple moments now, and maybe you even brought this up in the pre-race press conference that a couple people I think maybe commented on about. It's like, oh, you bring up the weather in Arizona and how challenging that was. It's like, well, why doesn't she just go somewhere else? I think it's just let's remind people you've got a full-time job that you're also balancing all throughout the training,
Yeah.
right? Is that's what's keeping you in Arizona, right?
Okay, so funny you brought this up because on the Uber to like in the Uber to the airport, Connor, my husband was like, "Okay, so like now, we got top 10 at the a major marathon. That's crazy, but like what do we have like what are we changing now that we've done this? Like how do we get better?" And I mean, if I take any lesson that I've learned like from my career, it's like don't change everything all at once.
Hmm.
And I love that he got so excited like, okay, do you need to do altitude, like maybe we go 6 weeks in flag and did it. And but for me it's, can I handle altitude? Yes. Could it maybe like make me better to get out in the summer and sleep more and train, in cooler temps and with other people? Yes, but I'm the kind of person and athlete that like needs everything else going on in my life around me. Like it's, yes, I have a job and that's a commitment and I need to be physically here for that, but it's more so just the tendencies that I fall back into if I'm only like eat, sleep, breathing, running, and it's not healthy for me. And when I spend too much time by myself, and I've gotten better at that, like in my own head, I don't use everything around me as a distraction from like coping and going through what my thoughts are, and I've gotten better at understanding like why I used to have the thoughts that I did, but I just get, I don't know, it's like I get in my own head when all I do is run. And if you've got a bad workout or a bad day, it just snowballs and, you don't quite have a lot of other things going on to give you the perspective that, hey, it was just that workout was 2 hours of your life and it's
Yeah.
okay. You're going to have a bad day sometimes and figure out why it went wrong and move on. But I'm just the kind of person that I need my friends, I need my family, I need my dog, I need my job and everything else to keep me grounded. But that is not to say that it's not something I'm not thinking about. Like I do think it would benefit me to get out of here, a few weeks at a time. And luckily I work for amazing people who are understanding. And now, I've been in this world for a year with them in my corner and I think they're getting it. Like it's a lot. So yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely thinking about, how I can navigate the summers because yeah, it's tough. You can't get around it.
Did anything else change in the training setup? Because, like, I remember you had your squad of women who would train with you throughout
Yeah.
the Olympic trials build up. But this time around, I mean, in workouts when you're trying to hit faster paces and, looking at you've stepped it up a bit. Does that change, the circle around you and you're looking for people to pace you now in tougher workouts? Like, what did that look like too?
Um, the interesting thing is, like I've synced up with, Rosie, Julia,
Yeah.
Katrina, to these women a few years ago. And the cool thing about becoming friends is like you start to see everything else going on in everybody's life. It's like, okay, yes, running brought us together, but people have their families and have their jobs and starting their businesses and have all these things going on. Um, and running isn't just like the main focus of why we spend time
Hmm.
together, but I've been lucky because a few awesome men have kind of joined the group, like Henry, Katrina's husband's in the group, and I've got a training partner, Shlomo, and Randy, and it's like half women, half dudes, and running with guys definitely helps. And I think that's something where, I'm respecting the fact that my training partners and friends likely might just have things kind of shift in the next year and that's great and I want to make sure that I'm able to spend time with them on the run but I'm also kind of thinking about like hey how can I set myself up well too to continue to push myself. And I think, it's once life kind of picks up and you're getting older, it's like they all have families and um when we can get together, it's like a total bonus. But I do feel like I operate well with structure um and part of the cool approach, of how I'm doing this is that yes, I'm my own coach and I'm able to be flexible. If one of the guys has a certain workout, I can kind of like be a chameleon and morph mine a little bit to like make sure we sync up more together. But I do think I need to start like really honing in on my like training a little bit more and having a better map and like sticking to it. Which is tough. Like I'm not a physiologist, I'm not a coach, I'm not so like maybe I will lean on I don't know who it would be, but I need to get a little bit more serious about like the training plan approach.
Yeah.
Because I'm just kind of like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. But like really listening to myself and knowing what I need to run well and stay healthy. But now it's like, okay, how can we like listen to Connor a little bit and be like, okay, how can we challenge ourselves like an incremental percentage that's healthy instead of like fully, like getting a coach, going to altitude, like switching or quitting my jobs, like that's not going to happen. But I need to start thinking about like the little things that I can fine tune and adjust for sure.
I think that's what just leads to there being so many Jess McClain fans out there is the fact that there's this relatability with you where it's like, yeah, there's definitely a big talent component and you're working hard in all of these workouts. But at the same time, there's like a slight part of it where it's like you are taking it seriously because this is your job, but you're not making it this overly stressful thing that so it's like
Yeah.
it's serious, but it's still fun for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everyone's probably listening to this being like, how did she strike that balance so well?
If I like had a simple answer, I would totally give it. I think it took taking a step away.
Yeah.
And there's people that are like, oh my God, like, how did she just sit on the couch and then come back and run so well, like 2 years later? And I'm like, okay, I wasn't just like sitting on the couch and like not running. Like, I was
Yeah.
running pretty much every day, just because I needed to like be sane. But I think a lot of it was perspective. The first time I had a contract, I think I didn't know how to frame it or be excited about it in a way where I'm like, okay, I still get to do the sport.
Mhm.
It felt like I didn't know how to handle the pressure. Um, and when things didn't go wrong, it was almost like I would freak out because I'm like, oh my gosh, like everything depends on this. And no, I mean, think of any job. Like and when I worked, for a startup and in corporate, like I messed up all the time and I still had a job the next day. You know what I mean? Like you have to figure out how to fail well and learn from it. And I think I was so scared to fail and I was also so scared to like be successful. It was like it was just weird. And I think once I took a step back and I don't know. Yes, having like a job and that stability has been super great because now I don't have to like rely on running to support myself. And I'm not only training and racing with that in mind. Like I'm doing it because I love it.
Mhm.
And once I stop loving it, you'll probably see me take another step back or like try to figure out why that's happening. And I just think that perspective is really healthy. And I don't think you have to like announce that you're taking a step back or you have to announce a soft retirement or like I just think do what you need to do to figure out what makes you happy and like what your recipe for success and happiness is. It's going to look so different from one athlete or person to the next. So yeah, it took a lot. It took a lot to get here. I'm not quite sure like if I could, draw a map out. I don't think
Yeah.
I could. Like it was just it was a roller coaster. And I went through a lot. Like it wasn't easy, but it's cool to be able to now do the sport that I love at a high level again and have fun with it.
So being back at this high level, like I'm gonna use your Instagram post to help kind of guide this reflection on the race. And it's like maybe did you feel like there was some pressure? You described
Mm.
nerves on the starting line, but like in a way, good nerves. Like it's good to
Yeah.
have those feelings because it shows that you care.
Yeah, 100%. I think the amount of nerves that I had for as far out from the race as I was probably not a good thing. Like I think I it's funny, like week 6 to 10 of training for New York, I was like, oh my God, I need to stop thinking about Frank Sinatra and the start line and like running through Brooklyn and all these things and watching like old YouTube videos because I'm getting like so excited. Like I was just so pumped. And then once it got closer, um, it's always those thoughts that you're battling with. It's like, oh my gosh, like I want to represent Brooks so well, and Susanna did amazing in Chicago, and I'd love to be like top American and kind of have that sweep in the fall marathons for us. And I started thinking about like, okay, yeah, I did get the call to Paris, and I didn't get to race, and people don't think I would have done well, and I want to be able to do well in New York and like show. But the minute you start thinking about like everybody else and like what how you want them to perceive your career or your efforts or your success or whatever, it's like that's like, Jess, that's not why we're doing this anymore. Like that's not like you're doing this because you love it and you want to be like authentic about your journey. And I think part of being authentic is like being an elite and being nervous and like leaning into that. And I'm not going to be one to like not share that. I think, but in like, a pre-race or post-race interview or anything like that. And I think with a lot of people I've looked up to, it's like that authentic and that vulnerable insight that you get. And New York isn't easy. Like you really can't fake it. So it's like I either trained well and the way I'm doing this is great and I kind of know what I'm doing, or it's like, oh my God, I totally swung and I missed.
Hmm.
But I think the way to look at that is like it's okay to miss. Um, but I think at this level it's tough because it's like you want to do well by your sponsor and all the people that got you to the start line and now these amazing people that like are invested in my journey and but I have to just to like bring myself back down because nerves are good. Like it definitely means you care. If you're not nervous, I mean, I guess that's cool that you can get to a start line of a 26.2 mile race and have no nerves. But for me, a little bit of nerves is great. I think um, this was just a really good step in learning how to compete on the international stage. I mean, I really haven't up until this point, like in a high caliber. I think I did NACAC like one year, like
Hmm.
5 or 6 years ago. But this is like the most I've competed on an international stage with other Olympians and marathon veterans, and it was a really good yeah, it was just a really good weekend to learn a lot.
I like the idea. I was just thinking about like when you mentioned it's like just getting yourself hyped up, this playing Sinatra and all that stuff. Just Connor being like, enough with the Sinatra. Like you've just been playing him nonstop around the house. And then like you get to hear it on the starting line. The cannon
Yeah.
goes off. At that point, all these thoughts that have been creeping up and the pressure and does that just go away? Because then now, boom, it's game time and the race has started. And the funny part is it goes off so slow because you're going uphill that it's just like, oh, we're doing this.
Yeah, the funny thing about the morning too was, in the technical meeting, they're like, if you're not on the bus, if Ath is not on bus at 5:45, you're getting left. Which I'm a big proponent of. Like I've been left on warm-ups and that has taught me a lesson. But the bus was actually 20 minutes or 25 minutes late leaving,
Oh, wow.
just outside the hotel. So we didn't end up taking off for the start line until like 6:05 or maybe a few minutes after that. And I don't think we arrived to the warm-up track until like 7:20 and we had to get back on at 7:50 or 7:55. So by the
Wow.
time we like loaded off the bus, got to the track, we had like 18 to 20 minutes to warm up. Um, and for me, like anybody, if I was nervous and all of these thoughts were going to my through my head, I feel like anybody knowing that would have been like, oh my God, that probably like really screwed you and like made you more nervous. And it actually just like calmed me down. I was like, okay, we've all got 20 minutes, you see the people who've run New York like Des and a few others just totally chilling, like not stressed out about it. And I think part of it too is yeah, that first mile is notably slow. And much rather be like, in the indoor track as long as possible. And I'm from Arizona, so a start time in a temperature of anything in the 40s is freezing for me. So I was fine. Once I got to the track and off the bus, totally calm. I think I got a lot of flack for wearing my number bib on my
Yeah,
front.
explain that, I guess. What happened?
Oh my God. I'd pinned my bib at like 4:30 in the morning, and I honestly just don't think I just grabbed a bib and like slapped it on my front, and then I had Connor pin the one on my back. And he's like, "Oh man, I did see McClain on your back." And I kind of thought that was weird, but I didn't really say anything. And I'm like, "Dude, God, come on." Um, and then it was really funny because Des kind of came up on me on the Queensboro Bridge, and I couldn't tell if she was like laughing or something. Like there was a moment, and I was like, "Huh." Like, I don't know. And then when we finished, we were kind of in the athlete tent, and she's like, "Jess, I ran up on you and I was like, something's not right with McClain." And she's like, "You had your name bib on your back." And I was so confused because people were like yelling at me on the course, like, go 112. And I'm like, oh, weird that they're like saying my number. I had no idea. But I mean, total noob, rookie mistake. I had no idea what I was doing pretty much like up until the start and the gun went off. But then once the gun went off, I just felt like a total sense of ease. I think I think the Verrazano Bridge is like a nice beat to like get warmed up. You don't have the crowds quite yet. Yes, you have a crosswind, but for the most part, it's like getting into that rhythm. And it's a very like nice introduction into like the first few miles. And then it's like once Brooklyn crowds hit at like 2.5 or 3, it's like game over. And I thought I'd be more in tune with the crowds than I was, but I was pretty zoned out until after Queensboro.
Hmm.
I was like, get your bottles, stay out of trouble. There was a lot of jostling actually, like um a lot of people being like, I'm coming over, like, get off my back, some bows, some like, stepping on each other. So it's been a minute since I've been like bunched in a race like that. But I mean, that's what makes it fun. I love
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Con
I
Connor
love
brought
running.
up Connor Mance was like talking about like, and this just comes with experience, especially at these world stages, is like
Yeah.
knowing what your bottle table is and where to
Yes.
position yourself among the pack to make the right
Yep.
move and approach it the right way so you're not cutting across with someone. Like, how did you do with all of that?
I did well. I knew, so I was table two, position two, and Sharon was position one. So it was like Sharon's here and well, let me do this. Like, I'm like behind her. And I was like, okay, well, odds are Sharon will be ahead of me for a good amount of time. So like she'll get through the table and then I'll have like a clean sweep to like grab my bottle. And that was pretty much, I did find myself with her, a few of the tables, but yeah, people were pretty good at like putting their blinkers on and like signaling that they were going to come in and then come out. Um, and I knew, just by, my GPS was off, but I was like, okay, once we hit the 3 mile mark, I'm going to like make my way on the inside, take any tangents, um, ahead of that bottle station just to make sure I can get there with least friction possible. But yeah, the bottle stations were different to navigate. At this level because the pack was so big. In
Mhm.
Orlando, I had already kind of like fallen off the pack. I kind of let him go at 3 miles because it was so hot, the pace was. So I was kind of in a smaller pack in Orlando, but this was like, I mean, we were like 20 deep for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was interesting. And then the roads in New York, like I I was only familiar with the back half, like the last 13
Hmm.
miles. I'd raced or run that in the bike lanes and on sidewalks before New Haven. So I was like somewhat familiar, but I kind of left the first half a mystery to myself. I was like, oh, I don't like that doesn't make me nervous, but I do feel like like I had no idea how undulating it was and how hilly Brooklyn was, and there were more turns in Brooklyn that I remembered, watching on the course preview and stuff like that. So
And
it
the
was
crowds are right on top of you.
crowds are
Like
on top of you. Yeah,
crazy.
bands, yeah. So it was fun. And then you'd pass like I remember passing the on crowd and being like, oh my God, like with Helen and like it was really cool to see everybody's camp. And I for some reason like I couldn't hear my family very well, but Brooks people like I could like Clara and a few of the Brooks employees I could pick out of the crowd, so that was really fun. But yeah, there wasn't like anything really notable until after Queensboro for me. I was just kind of staying out of trouble, tucking in. There was wind pretty much. We had a headwind heading north like pretty much the entirety of the way through
Oh wow.
up First Ave until you looped through the Bronx and came back down. So I was just trying like anywhere I could tuck. I was trying.
Did you
Yeah.
have, well, the 6 foot Swiss woman?
Oh
Like,
my gosh. Yes. I was
good
like,
person
who?
to try and block some wind.
She crushed. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was amazing. I saw her in warm up and I'm like, oh my gosh, she doesn't look familiar. But I think her bib was like 111 or it was like, right around mine. So I was like, oh, I was trying to figure out who she was. And then in the race, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, she's cruising and crushing. And yeah,
Super
there were a
tall.
few of us that we're kind of in that pack for like Kellen. I was, fellow hat wearer. I feel like I'm always keeping my eye on Kellen. She's so tough. Sarah, I knew was going to be coming for redemption. And then Dakota, obviously, like I feel like there were a few of us Americans. Maggie Montoya looked amazing. Jenny looked so good, like through half. I was so stoked when she took the lead. I'm like, this is awesome. So there was a few things, just as like a fan of the marathon and having like been in this distance now for a few years, where it was like I saw things happening in the race, and I'm like, that's pretty cool, and I'm glad I'm a part of this.
All right, so then the big move is coming off the Queensboro Bridge. There's a
Hmm.
surge. Sarah covers the move.
Yeah,
And this, I guess, is like has just been a part of your marathoning strategy, especially at the trials, which was just trusting your instincts. And in
yeah.
that moment, I guess your instincts told you don't go with that move, and it has paid off. Even I guess like just pacing wise, like you're always, your body and the signs to not
Mm.
overexert yourself so that you're not dying at the end. But in retrospect, like, is there anything you would have done differently coming up First Avenue?
Yeah, I think I wish I would have gone with it just to feel it out. Um, But in the moment, like coming off the bridge, I think it was the first time I kind of felt my legs, the downhill off of Queensboro and like those few sharp turns. That was the first time I felt my quads and like my legs, like, oof, I am a little tired, but it wasn't like anything alarming. Um, but my breathing, everything else was fine. For some reason, my gut just said like, hey, let's let them go. But now, hindsight 2020, I'm like, man, I should have just felt it out. Like you can always drop back. But I think, yeah, I just need to grow in the sport a little more and trust myself. I haven't gotten to the point where I've like, even in a workout where I've like maxed out or bonked or died or have gotten to that point. So I don't know what it feels like and to maybe come out the other side of it and have it go okay. Yeah, I think part of it too was like, all right, this is New York. I was familiar with Fifth Ave and I knew what was coming in Central Park. So I was like, it's a gamble, and I'd rather be able to pick a few women off at the end than being the one getting picked off, at least for my first go at this. But yeah, I think if I could go back and change things, I may have gone with them and just to see how it would have turned out. But when I look at my splits, like I haven't really done this. I mean, I was pretty much like 5:39 starting at 9 miles, and then every 5K from there it was like 39, 39, 39, 40, 38, 38, 38, 38, 38. So it's like I was running really consistent. But yeah, I feel like I could have maybe squeezed a little bit in mile 16, 18.
So I'm looking at just kind of like the gap between Sarah and you. Was she within eyesight the whole time?
Um, I remember coming across the last bridge out of the Bronx back into
Hmm.
Manhattan, and we were all spaced out. I remember seeing Sarah coming down the bridge, and I'm like counting, there was like one clean strip of shade, and I was like, okay, let's see how far she is, like one, two, you're like counting in your head. And she was ahead of me at that point. I think there was another American, I can't remember who exactly may have been, or Lily. It was Lily was ahead of me, and I was kind
Hmm.
of just keeping my eyes on Lily. But that point of the race, those who didn't go with the lead pack, like we were strung out. But then I remember, having that shot of Fifth Ave, that lovely view where it just you're like, oh my God, it is uphill, and you
Yeah.
cannot see that turn into Central Park until you're close to it. But I remember seeing Sarah, and I'm like, okay, she is getting, and Sharon, I'm like, they're getting a little closer. But it would have been fun to be right there with Sarah because I feel like we both have good speed. I mean, she's
Hmm.
so fast. So I'm like, oh, I just wonder like what those last few miles could have looked like if I stuck it out. But no, she was in it to, get that first American spot. And I think that it just shows that she's been doing the marathon a lot longer than I have and has the confidence to go when that move's made. And I'll get there. I have a lot of people telling me like, just trust yourself and go. And for some reason, like that's just a hurdle I have to get over and do the work to get there. So it's good. It means I have growth and room for improvement. So
I like the visual of you two side by side sprint finish with within the final mile, and like everyone in the crowd probably being like, why did they save so much in the tank? And it's like, this is actually a 1 mile race now for $25,000.
she's so fast. I mean, gosh, just watching her in the 15 and 5, like my whole career, yeah, it's amazing. But she looked, I need to go back and like, I wish we got like a recording as the elites to like go back and watch it. I've been trying to find, the streams and stuff, and I'd love to see the race like from the front and see how it unfolded at the end. But I've seen tweets and posts and some videos, so I know. But yeah, it'd be fun to watch it back.
So what are the feelings right after crossing the finish line? Like, I get with Connor, it was so interesting. If with these podcasts I've done with Connor, Clayton, and CJ, especially with a
Yeah.
men's marathoner, they are so critical
Oh
over
my
their
gosh.
performance.
I know.
Like
It's
they haven't given themselves 24 hours, 48 hours to be happy. It's more like should have gone with this move, or it's like should have done this and that. And it's like, guys,
yeah,
you ran really well. And
crushed it.
my job in these conversations is to really kind of like let them savor that performance. And Connor's like, I had so much left in the tank. I mean, did you feel anything similarly there?
Um, a little bit, but oh man, I was definitely more like excited and happy seeing the finish line and proud of myself because uh, yeah, just the last 10 to 14 days of the lead up where I just felt like I was getting in my own head. And it was the first time I'd kind of like gone through every scenario of what could have gone wrong instead of being like, oh, we're going to visualize crushing, getting every bottle and, feeling good up this hill, coming off this hill well, taking these tangents. Like I was literally like, oh my God, what if I missed the bottle here? And like I was spiraling a little bit. And then so once I crossed the finish line, I was like, wow, I was able to like sleep like total dog crap and like have all these thoughts but still like pull it off and have like a lot of fun and feel good. So I walked away like so happy. Like it was my first major experience, so I tried to really soak it in the last few miles, like Central Park South and um like that was just the coolest thing. Like I'd race the mini and finish the Abbott Dash on that course, but it was such a different experience in the marathon. No, I was really happy. I had no sense of time. Like I had no idea what I was running while I was out there, and I was pretty happy with 2:27. Um, I feel like I probably could have run in the 2:26s, but if I, had gone with that pack and just tested myself. So there were like those moments of reflection where I was like, man, what if I just went? And what if I just like kind of powered, down the hills and the last mile a little bit more because seventh place wasn't too far ahead of me.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there were moments of like what ifs or coulda, woulda, shoulda, but for the most part, it was like a resounding happiness, like just soaking in the finish line experience and um, watching others cross and seeing those who already did celebrate. And yeah, I was happy. I was definitely proud of myself. But all the reflections coming,
Yeah.
once I got home and on the plane and yeah.
I guess like you brought up Connor being like, all right, we got to do this, this, and this, and this, and you're gonna level up because of all these little X factors.
Yeah.
Love his excitement. How much time do you give yourself before you start to also think about that? We've brought up some of
Yeah.
those elements, and you're already kind of thinking about it. But what are the considerations you make before you really start thinking about the next one?
I'm definitely already thinking about the next one, and I think that's a good sign. It means that I did enough right, where I'm like excited about the prospect of another build. And I feel like marathoning is like being on the hamster wheel. Like you're now you're on it. Like you're on the cycle and it's exciting. Um, but God, it's been nice to like not plan my day around a morning run and sleep in and focus on work and, hang out with family, etc. But I mean, I'm already like ready to go for a jog, which is funny. Like this is the first marathon where that sounds nice. And Connor actually has a 50K trail race tomorrow, which is hilarious. So I'll go out there and jog on the trails and take the legs for a little shakeout spin. And but yeah, I'm planning for probably a spring marathon, maybe a half or a race. For some reason, a 5K on the indoor track sounds fun. Low expectations, but I feel
You
like
got to
it's
go
really
back to BU, right? Your
no
your PR is 15:12,
12,
right?
I think. Yeah, I just had to look that up the other day.
Oh, right
I don't know.
before the pandemic, too.
Right before. Yeah, it was like the last time I ran on the track. Before, yeah, everything. But yeah, I'm definitely like you know, I'm masterminding in my head about what it'll look like and what I might tweak or who I may reach out to for some input and just like some guidance or who in my camp could provide that. Just different ways to challenge myself. I think I've proven that, okay, the safe zone is, the 70 to 85 mile a week range and really focusing on one hard workout a week and one hard long run. But it's like, okay, I think I've been healthy for 2 years, knock on wood, almost to the day. I actually had a sacral stress fracture on our wedding anniversary, which was November 13th, 2022.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's been 2 years of health. Um, yeah, I did that build completely wrong. I swung the other direction where I was running like 80-mile weeks and hammering workouts and going straight to work and not fueling enough and all this stuff. So yeah, there's things I want to tweak or implement. Work will be my role is kind of like evolving into more of like a business development role at work for next year, which alleviates a lot of the time on feet and event planning and stuff like that. So that bodes well for training. But I'm excited to see what I can do, like with a spring build in good weather and yeah, work being a little less crazy and now maybe running more miles. Yeah, I think it would bode really well for a good spring marathon. So I'm excited for that.
Okay, so spring marathon, and then famously in our podcast in February, like I asked you about the track, and you're like, no, never. Then when you signed with Brooks, we touched base again, and you're like, actually, yeah, I'm gonna give the track a shot. Goes
Uh-huh.
really well. You run a PR of 31:35 on the track. You actually go faster, on the roads
Roads, I
in
know.
New York, and then you finish fourth also at the U.S. Olympic trials. Is the door shut again on the 10K on the track for next year?
Um, I think if it works out and it folds in well, no. I think I'd tackle one, but I don't think I don't know. It's tough because I do think training for and racing on the track has made me a stronger marathoner. At least, the back half of races for me in the marathon have shown that all that work is, I think paying off. So never say never. I mean, night of 10K PBs in London looks really fun. Like there's some
Oh, I
10Ks
have
like now
bad news.
instead
It's
of,
not happening next year.
oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Damn.
So that's the thing.
Okay.
It's like there are just so few 10K opportunities in the
I
lead up. So it's
know.
like if you're considering maybe a spring or early
Yeah.
half marathon, then you fold that into the 10 and then try and run a qualifying time there to get to USA. Like it's crazy. It's November. It's the second week of November and you already
Mm.
basically have to have your spring planned out.
Yeah, no, it's wild. And then, after having like dipped my toe back into the road racing circuit, I'm like, God, that was so fun. So I don't know. The track would have to really make sense.
Hmm.
I'll be on the track training for sure. But who's to say like I could do time trials or like there's ways to get creative with the track stuff. But I think if anything that I've learned from this year, it's like I have so much fun on the roads. So it's yeah, it's a healthy balance of like what do I love doing, what gives me confidence, what do I have the most fun doing, but what challenges me and is hard and will make the road running, more successful. And it's like, yes, the track does that. So I'll figure it out. Yeah, I'll get some input. I need to like actually dedicate like a day or two to sitting down and figuring. There's so much going on now with like, we had the Athlos amazing meet this year, and then you've got Grand Slam and I'm just so intrigued to see how this year shakes out across the board for our sport. Um, Amazing new opportunities, but then you do have like the sound running meets and a lot of amazing opportunities here that I think are great for me. Easy flight for work, and they fit into my life and training well. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see for sure.
All right. Final thing I want to do with you is we've been doing these overrated, underrated segments on like training topics
Oh
and
God.
theories.
Okay.
And since you're your own coach, I figured, oh, let's get Jess to chime in on some of these things.
Okay.
So rapid fire, but you can give me kind of like your reasoning behind whether you think some of these things are overrated, underrated.
Oh
You could
God.
say properly rated, or, I'll throw out the option too, where you're just like, I don't know enough about it. I'll pass on this one because there are some of those things too. All right, first thing, altitude.
I mean, from a personal perspective, I think oh God. See, like this is tough because it makes you so much better. And I think you're able to kind of hone in and really focus on training and be with a lot of amazing people and get the boost and all that good stuff. But for me, I would say from a personal perspective, overrated.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
Just for me, just for
Yeah.
me. I mean, I haven't trained at altitude in over 4 years, 5 years, so that could maybe I'll give it a go this year and completely change my mind. God, okay, what's next?
Alter G.
Oh, overrated. I used to love it in college. I was on it a lot, and then once I'd get banged up a lot, my first pro stint. And I actually think it did a lot more damage in terms of my form and the way my body moved coming off of it, that I almost had to like undo a lot of that. And how I've tackled my last major injury was your body's hurt, you are in a hole, take complete time off. And that was the easiest comeback I've had from an injury. And I was 30 years old. And I mean, I did not cross train. I mean, cross training is great. For me, I just let my body completely recover and I didn't force an alter G, few weeks or months coming back. And I, yeah, I think alter Gs are overrated.
All right,
Mm.
you brought cross training up, cross training while healthy.
Oh, I think not underrated. I think it's great. I personally don't need it. If I could figure out a smart way to implement it, I would. But no, I mean, gosh, Susanna is like a prime example of how amazing like cross training is. I think it's underrated, great. Yes, if it doesn't make you crazy, go for it. For me, I can't, I just can't. I have to just run or take a day off.
Double threshold.
Okay, so I haven't explored double threshold yet. I know it's very popular. The only day that it was one of the only doubles I've done that I can like reflect on this year, and it was definitely not double threshold. I did like a 4 or 5 mile effort in the morning and then came back and did like 10 to 12 200s in and out on the track. Um, and I do think that was during my highest mileage week. I do think there's something for, especially like in the summer in Phoenix, like that might be something I explore next year, like breaking up longer efforts into two, a lot more in the morning and some in the afternoon on the treadmill or something, just to make sure I get the work in. I don't think it's overrated for me personally. I just haven't explored it yet, and I think you really have to do it right.
Hmm.
And so I think if you know how to do it well, yeah, great, for
Uh,
sure.
blood lactate testing.
Oh man, data is definitely not overrated, but for me, it's just running. Like, yes, could it make me better to get my VO2 max tested and lactate threshold and like know those levels? I don't know enough of training to like take that data and digest it and then apply it to my training in a scientific
Yeah.
data-backed approach. Again, it's like one of those things. I think it's underrated, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to wear gadgets and poke myself on the reg to run. Like for me, that's not what running is for me. I think
Yeah.
it's great if it's a tool that you have access to and love, but yeah, if it works for you, that's great. But for me, it's not necessary.
BU's track
Oh God, BU's track. Just in general.
in general. Overrated, underrated. I mean, your PR is from there.
I know. I mean, I don't think it's underrated. Do people think it's overrated?
I think some
Like a
people have
lot.
said that like I forget if overrated's been thrown out, but just that like properly rated in the sense that like it does the trick and like now there's just like more mystique around it and
There
there's
is
maybe a
mystique.
placebo effect with
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I
So,
mean, I think indoor track's so fun. I don't know, underrated. Yeah. Mm,
soft surfaces.
mm. Um, Probably underrated. I spend probably 50%, no more, probably 60 to 70% on soft surfaces here. We have like a great
Oh,
canal
wow.
system. Yeah, it pretty much runs like east to west in Metro Phoenix, and you can go south to Tempe all the way to ASU. Uh, I think soft surface is great. Yeah, I think it's underrated. As long
CJ
as
Albertson has such a hard stance. He's like, I'm training
I
for the
know
roads. I'm gonna
running
only
on the
run on
roads.
roads.
I know. I do a lot of my like workouts on roads. So then, on those days, like I feel really good. I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like super shoes and roads. That it's like all the boost you need. But
Yeah.
I do a lot on soft surface actually, but it's not like it's because I think soft surface is the best. It's just, it's the best place to run here. So yeah.
Uh, you brought up super shoes. Super shoes. That's the next one.
Mm, oh God.
Yeah. How much work do you do in super shoes? Just workouts and long runs?
Yeah, just workouts and long runs. I really need to invest in a pair of and this is a total me problem. Like I just think there was like a color not available for Brooks and I just haven't like pulled the trigger on getting them, but just like the basic flat. Like I just want
Ah,
flat where I could like feel my feet working a little bit more especially on the track and on, the roads for those like longer efforts. I do think super shoes are great for like I'll slip them on halfway through a long run when my hard work starts or put them on for the hard segments of a long run. Pretty much wear them for the entirety of longer workouts. I do a lot in spikes, to be honest. I love spikes. Like I used to hate them. I used to get banged up every time I put spikes on, and now I'm like, I love feeling my feet working. And that like soreness that you get after wearing spikes, it's like, oh my God, it's like my body down and up the chain is working like it needs to. But with super shoes, it's like, okay, you can get a lot of miles in and then recovery's sped up. It's like their shoe technology is great. Um, but I think they're underrated. I still think there's a lot of work left to do on them, but like all of the iterations of the Brooks shoes that I've been wearing, I used to run in another brand shoes when I was first marathoning, and I significantly feel better wearing the Brooks Hyperions, and some of the Protos that I've been wearing are fantastic. So like now that I'm Team Brooks, I love them. So, but I have a pretty big shoe rotation. I probably wear like four different pairs of shoes a week.
oh wow.
Um, yeah, like I wear different shoes for different runs. So.
You had a prototype on in New York, right?
Yeah, 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 those are protos. I think Des wore them too.
Mhm.
It was kind of split down the middle. Like a lot of, I know CJ loved the other protos that we have, and Susanna crushed in them. I can't remember what Colin, I think Colin was running in the other ones too. So it's fun to like see, who likes which shoe and um
Exciting things to come then. Yeah.
yes, very, very, very.
Bicarb.
I've not tried bicarb yet, but I keep seeing it everywhere. Nutrition is something, yeah, that I kind of want to hone in on a little bit more. There's no method to my madness of what I take in. Like I like the Mortons because it's not liquidy and I can like kind of just handle it a little easier when I'm running. But I basically just do water in my bottles and shoot a gel. I don't like to be married to a certain amount of liquid because
Wait, so in all your bottles on the course is just water in there.
it's just water. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean I didn't even take my last bottle because I was like so full. Like I was like things were coming up and I was just swallowing it back to like TMI. But I'm like I'm done. I'm like I can't fit any more in here. But yeah, with the water I'm just like it's nice because I get the gel down and I'm like taking as much water as you need to like get the gel down. Um but yeah, perhaps I need more carbohydrate. I don't think I do. Like I haven't really bonked or like hit a moment where I'm cramping or anything like that. And my stomach has felt fine taking in Morton gels. But bicarb is something, yeah, pre-run and pre like I'm interested. I'm intrigued by it. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't have an answer for that one.
Last one is weightlifting. How often are you in the weight room?
Weightlifting underrated or just strength in general. I'm not in the gym as often as I would like. Partly because of scheduling and partly because I'm trying to get my body like just back to base level understanding what's going on before I start implementing. I do a lot at body weight or like I have a pair of 8 pound dumbbells over there. Swole. Uh, but yeah, there's like very simple exercises and things I'm doing right now to strengthen a lot of things and improve inefficiencies. And then I'm hoping that's something I'm working on with George, who's my massage therapist and physio. Uh, so smart. He's amazing, but I have a feeling he has like a mischievous plan and pitch for me of like implementing a lot more next year. So I'm excited for that. I do think too, as I'm getting older, super important. I used to lift a ton. Like I used to do like hit classes and go to the gym like 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times a week, and I would just like be pounding weights. But there was no method to it other than just like, oh, I'm lifting and it's fun. But I want to make sure I'm very like purposeful about it, like based on what my body needs and how I can help redirect what's going on and kind of like make sure I'm activating things that I apparently haven't been working well for the entirety of my career. So yes, underrated. I think the gym is great, especially as a marathoner. Yeah, I think it's awesome.
All right, Jess. Well, I appreciate you taking the time for this, and so glad we got to catch up multiple times all throughout the year. And I'm excited to do more of these next year as your marathoning and racing career just really continues to take off.
Oh, thanks, Chris. It's been fun to spend more time together this year. I'm gonna have to keep running well, so it keeps happening.
Even after the bad races, we could try and pinpoint what went wrong.
Hey, I'm game for that. I'm an open book. But thanks so much. Hopefully you've been able to get some R&R after the madness of last week. All the things.
Yeah, all the things.